Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Rangel. Happy to share with you a video I was recently able to record. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Lori Kenepp. We had a conversation that touched on the basis of faith and everything that goes into modern society. The struggle between living in a world in which we must rely on what we see and a faith that challenges to believe in what we don't. Please join me for this conversation, and I hope that you may find a little bit of your own perspectives in our conversation. Thank you. So speaking of beginnings, where do you chart your coming to the faith, uh, being a Christian? Is it back in childhood, or is it later as an adult? Where does that begin for you?
Well, two places. I mean, going back to it, as a child, uh, my family, um, we weren't going to church at the time, and our neighbors invited my sister and me to Vacation Bible School, and so we started going, and then our parents started going to the church, um, and then that's just kind of how that took shape. And then I really credit my dad as being the key person, and my mom too, but my dad was always the one, teaching us about God. And, I was, anyone who knows me, I like to ask questions. I just do. I always have. And as a little girl, I'd always ask my dad all kinds of questions because he knew all the answers, as a little girl, you think that. And so, I would always ask him questions about God, and he'd be like, "Okay, oh, well, go get the Bible." And I'm like, "Oh gosh, I don't want to get into a big conversation. I just thought I'd be able to ask you," but he'd always say, "Oh, go get my Bible." Like, oh, but he instilled all of this in me, and he's also a teacher, and so he would teach Bible studies. I ended up going to college. I went away to college, and and at that time, I had every intent on continuing going to church. Um, but, I was living in a dorm. Nobody else wanted to go to church with me. And I didn't really want to go by myself.
Mm.
And so I just didn't. I stopped going to church. And then, just kind of got caught up in college life and just trying to navigate, what it means to be an adult and trying to find my way, and having other people's influences, and so I ended up for about a period of 12 years. I wasn't in college for 12 years, but but college and beyond, I'd say most of my 20s, I was not living for God. I was, I never didn't believe in him. And I had every intent to, at some point, um, I knew I wanted to go back to him. I wanted to get married, find a godly man, raise our kids, in church, and, knowing God and teaching them about him. But I thought, in between now, I'm not ready yet to, you know, commit. so so I just did my own thing. And then and God let me, you know, he would tug. I'd feel a little tugging here and there, but I'd kind of, I just kind of ignore it. And then, like, when I'd be watching TV and flipping channels and there's somebody giving a sermon or something, I'd be like, "Oh, no, I don't I don't want to watch that." No. Flip quickly before I start to get convicted. Um so so but there was a time when for me, everybody's different and circumstances are different for everyone. But for me, I felt I hit rock bottom. In just There was actually one moment in time that I remember that changed everything. And And I didn't like where I was headed. I didn't like what I had become and what I was willing to accept. And I'm being very cryptic right now,
That's fine.
but
That's fine.
but yeah, I just so I became kind of a different person, and I didn't like it, and I felt like God let me go there, and so I could actually see myself. And so it was at that point I said, "Okay, God, I need you, and I can't do this by myself, and I need you." And so I asked him, to direct me to a church, help me find a church to go to. And I said, there has to be more than this. I need to know you better. I want to know you better. And so he kind of took me on a journey. I did end up going to one church for about a year.
Mm.
And then, mm, you know, that was okay, but I was still, it didn't quite fill the, what I
Something
was
was missing.
something was missing. Thank you. And so then, I kept praying, and I would open up the telephone book, the telephone book was, and I would look for a church, and I'd say, okay, I'll go visit this
Interesting.
one this week. And I'd go by myself, which I hated. I didn't want to go by myself, but I would go, I'd sit there, and I just wasn't feeling it. And I don't know what I was supposed to feel, but I just wasn't, nothing was connecting. And so I just kept praying. And then one day I happened to be in my apartment, and I had my window open, and I heard somebody talking outside the window about God. And I thought, ooh, this is interesting. There's a conversation going on out there, and I want to be a part of it because I liked talking, regardless of, whether I was going to church or not. I've always enjoyed talking about God and,
Mm.
you know, um, faith and all of that. So I wanted to get on this conversation. So I thought, I'm going to take my garbage out. Didn't need to be taken out, but I went out. And so the two people out there, they saw me, and we started chatting. And then I found out that, my neighbor was hosting a Bible study and invited me to go. And I said, sure, okay, I'll go. And then um, it happened to be Bible study where your dad, as a pastor, was conducting. And so, I thought, well, I'll go. I'll see what it's all about. And again, I'm a person with a lot of questions, and I had a lot of questions. And I thought I knew a lot, and I was prepared to go in and show your dad that he was wrong in some places. And he was very patient with me, I will say, very patient. And and I really liked the way he treated me, compared to a lot of pastors I had, the churches I had been to, or some of the Bible studies I'd been to, because yeah, I may have come across like, oh, I know it all. But instead of being patient, they would just be like, well, this is what we believe. Okay, so maybe this isn't, they didn't say this to me, but that's the attitude. Like, well, maybe you can just, this isn't right for you. But your dad was very patient. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. He would listen to me. And then he would just say, well, here, let's go, let's look and see what it says, the Bible. And so I'd go and I'd look. And I mean, he had patience with me until, I saw, like, I understood what he was talking about, and it made sense. And, but he never forced it, and he never made me feel really bad, like I was stupid or something, or, yeah. So anyway, long story short, I really liked that. And I know I know God knew that's what I needed. The other thing is, I ended up going to that Bible study for about 6 months, and not once did anyone there invite me to church. And I thought, why
Yeah,
are
it's
they doing?
unusual.
They would talk about it. They'd talk about what
Mm.
happened at church, you know. And I'm like, hmm, well, that's kind of weird. They haven't invited me. That's and you know, so one day I decided to, I want to check it out. I want to go see what it's about. So I went and knocked on my neighbor's door and he was surprised, like, yeah, sure, you can go. And so I went and so it was completely different than the type of church I had prayed about, because I had it in my mind what I wanted and what I thought where I thought I belonged. But God had a different plan for me. And that is something that I've learned is that, you know, again, I'm a planner
Mm.
and I like to be in control of things. And and God has shown me that I'm in control. Like I'm in control of things. And I know what's best for your life because I made you. He said, just trust me,
Mm.
just trust me. And so it was very different. And but there I learned a lot of things. I learned how to worship.
Mm.
Because we had worship growing up, but it was different. It was very different. It was, you know, take your hymnals and turn to whatever,
You
and
have a book in front of you, turn to a
we'd
certain
sing
page.
and we'd sing. And, I mean, that is a form of worship, but
Right.
this kind of took it a step beyond and made it more personal. It was more
Mm.
like, I mean, we weren't just singing about God, we were singing to Him personally, like worshiping. Like it was very personal, and everybody was, worshiping in their own way. And so, yeah, so it was different. And I, one of the things I had asked God was, I want to know you better. I want to know,
Mm.
yeah, I want to know you better. And so I feel like that's why He brought me there. Um, so one thing I've learned is that I just have to trust Him, and it's not always what He's asking me to do isn't always what I think, how I think it should be, what should be done.
So in those moments of your life where maybe you would have preferred to for God to have been a little bit more overt in your life,
Mm.
and kind of leading you directly, telling you where you should go, do you feel maybe instead, at the very least, He was guiding you from behind the scenes, keeping an eye on you, even if you didn't have a closer relationship with Him yet?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm.
For sure. I can see where he was watching over me, especially in those years where I wasn't really actively serving him, um, where I didn't have a close relationship with him. I see where he protected me
Mm.
and um, and also blessed me as well.
Mm.
Um, and it's a difficult thing to learn how he's guiding because he isn't just he does you don't just wake up and you get a letter from him saying, hey, or an email saying, hey, this is what I want you to do. um I wish it were like that. I don't know how many times I'm praying on my way to work in the morning and I say to him, "Ah, I wish you were sitting right here. Maybe you are, but I can't see you. But I'm like, I know you're here, but I wish we could go to coffee or something. It's not the same. I can feel him in my life. I know the way I can see what he's doing in my life. I know things that happen are because of him, but and I can talk to him and I know he hears me because he's answered me in different ways. But it's not like, there's sometimes I just wish I could be like, hey, let's go to coffee or let's. I do ask him to travel with me though. That is
Mm.
something. And by the way, right now I'm in a cafe in Vienna one of the many trips
Very
he
nice.
traveled with me too. So I feel him. I see him. When I say I see him, I don't see him, but I see him by the things that have happened in my life. I was working at this company for quite a while and got all this experience, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. But then at one point, it started not to be fun anymore, and just different circumstances led to it just becoming a real challenge, and where every morning I'd be praying on my way to work to help me get through the day. And I remember one day on my way home, I prayed and I said, God, I'm done. I'm done here. I don't want to be here anymore. And, life is short. I shouldn't have to pray every day, to have you help me get through the day. I want to be enjoying what I'm doing. I want to be in a place where I'm appreciated, and, I just feel like I'm thriving. And so I told God what I was looking for, what I wanted. I kind of made a list. And I said, I want you to open a door for me somewhere. I don't know where, but I know you know where. And I said, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I said, I really don't want to get laid off. But if I do, I know you'll have my back. I know you'll protect me. So, so yeah, that was me getting onto the freeway, having this conversation with him. And then I forgot all about it. I forgot about that conversation. And about a couple weeks later, I was at work and I was going into a one-on-one with my manager. And when we went into the room, there was another person there, and I thought they were just wrapping up their meeting. But no, it was from somebody from HR. And my manager starts to tell me, so we're eliminating your position. And at that point, she kept talking, but it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Peanuts gang, and it's like, wah, 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 wah. And I didn't hear her anymore. And I'm just like, I was in shock. But then I don't know how to explain this. It's not like I heard an audible voice. I didn't hear somebody talking to me, and it's weird that I describe it this way, but I don't know how else. But it was like on this side of my head, I kind of felt like a thought coming to me from over here. This is what you asked for. Don't worry, I got you. And I was like, and then all of a sudden I recalled, like, this is what oh my gosh, I did ask for this. And I remembered my conversation with God, and I was like, oh my, I was beyond shocked. I was more like shocked, like, oh my gosh, he heard me. Of course he heard me, right? But I'm like, he's acting on this, and he's got me, right? So all of a sudden, my boss gets up and, oh, we'll be in touch next week, whatever. I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting there with the person from HR, and she has tears in her eyes, and I'm like, are you crying? And she said, well, yeah, this is sad. I'm like, no, it's not. This is actually a good thing. I'm like, this is a good thing. I'm like, I asked for this. I really, and she was also a person of faith, so she,
okay.
I told her what had happened, so she didn't think I was crazy. But she's like, oh, okay, good. And so, I turned this around from being, oh, sad, oh, this is crisis, what am I going to do, to like owning it, like, yeah, I did ask for this. And so I know that God is working, and I'm going to be in good hands. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be something good. And this is so weird for me, because I'm a person who, I want to know what's happening. I want to know I want anybody who knows me, and I know people who know me know that and I think I've said this several times, I like to know what's happening. I like to plan. And so this was the first time in my adult life that I didn't know if I was still going to own my home
Mm.
5 months, because I was able to get 5 months severance. So I didn't know if I was going to still own my home, if I was going to still live where I live, or if I was going to be living with my parents.
Mm.
I didn't know where I was going to be. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. But I did know that God was going to do something, and that he had initiated this whole thing. Because, yeah, so this was a time that I was able to just, um, during those 5 months, I was able to spend more time with God, because now I didn't have a job to go to. So I had plenty of time to spend time and not be distracted.
Mm.
Um, and so I would pray, and I would listen and listen, you know, and when everybody was telling me, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? Are you better get your resume together. You better get going, because it could take you a long time to get something, and they're giving me anecdotes of people they knew that took them years to find a job. And I'm like, I'm
The
like,
horror stories.
yeah, I'm like, okay, first of all, please don't give me any more stress. I don't need that. Um, but God was telling me the opposite. God was telling me, no, I don't want you working on a resume. I just want you
Mm.
to relax, just rest. And again, he wasn't, I didn't hear him. I didn't hear a voice telling me this. It was just, he talks to everybody differently. I'm sure you
Mm.
know, Jonathan. Um, and that's the other thing about God, is he's very personal.
Mm.
And trying to understand how he talks to you is a lesson in itself. Because the way he talks to somebody else may be different than the way he talks to you. So you can't just say, well, hi, how come it's different. And so that's been another lesson trying to learn. And for me, it's impressions. Um, and he'll also talk to me in dreams. I
Mm.
have dreams as well. So that's another story. And those dreams are very different. And people be like, well, how do you know? They're very different than just your normal dream. I'll just say that. So anyway, um, yeah, so he was telling me to rest. And so I did spend that time resting. Um, and then it was probably maybe, that was May that this all happened. And then it wasn't until maybe July that I felt like, okay, now you can start preparing and looking. And he brought people into my life to help me prepare.
Mm.
Because it'd been a long time since I'd actually been, looking for a job. And so I was looking, I was interviewing, but I still just didn't know where I fit. There were a couple directions I could have gone, and I didn't know which one
Mm.
I should go in. And so I remember one day, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking online, I'm reading different things. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And I was getting a little frustrated. And I will just say, just because I knew God had me, had my back and he was guiding me, did not mean that I was just like without any worry. I was just like, oh, that's great. No worries. No, this was a very stressful time in my life.
Mm.
And I've never really, well, I get depressed, of course, at times, but having real symptoms of depression, that was very real. Um, because it was, first time I'm not going anywhere every day,
Mm.
and my friends are, I spend time with them on the weekends, and then, like, okay, then they're not around during the week because they have a job to go to. I don't, and I'm sitting there. But
Mm.
anyway, so it was starting to get to me, and I knew I only had a couple months left, and then I was out of money. And so I said, I remember having a meltdown. I was sitting on my couch with my computer looking for things, and I just had a meltdown to God. And I just said, Lord, I need you to show me, guide me. Where do you want me? Um, because I know you have a plan, and I don't know what it is. And um, And I said, I'm not good at subtlety. Not good at subtlety. I want to know that I know that I know that I know that this is where you want me. Okay. And I said, I know that that this is the only income. I don't have any other income coming in. And, you're my provider. Because I've always looked at him as my provider.
Mm.
And I said, I'm fully expecting you to provide something for me and to direct me. And so I was very bold with him. I do get, see, that's the other thing. I can be bold with the Almighty, just like, I'm sure if I saw him face to face,
Many have, even in the Bible.
I'm sure if I saw him face to face, I'd be like, oh my gosh, did I really? But, but anyway, but so I'm not kidding you. I said, I need you to put something in my lap just because I'm not good at subtleties. I'm not going to pick up on little, maybe this or that. I need you to put it in my lap. Later that evening, I got an email from a friend of mine, from her daughter, who worked um, at a place, and so she said, "Hey, Lori, we're looking for somebody. We need somebody for this position, and it's part time." I'm like, and it's in this department. I'm like, that doesn't. I'm like, what am I going to do in that department? And for this position, that doesn't really. I don't know anything about it. It doesn't sound like something I would be interested in, and it's part time. It doesn't make any sense. That would be my normal rationale, because I'm an overthinker too. So I was, but for some reason, I just went. I was kind of like, well, wait a minute. I just asked God to bring something to me, a job, and so I just instead of doing my usual analyzing everything, I just went with it. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do it. So that led to an interview, and then I got hired. And because people were telling me, no, this is good because this could turn into permanent. It could turn into permanent. I'm like, okay, all right. And then I found out that the person who was hiring me said that they saw that I had communications in my background, and that they were wanting to start a communications team.
Wow.
Now, I would not have known that if I had said no. If I had just said, "Oh, this position, this isn't seem to be a fit for me." But God knew that they were looking for a communications person. And so I said yes. I got hired, and even then, I was still temporary, and it still was like a year's journey of going around to different positions, part time, taking a pay cut, all these things. It wasn't just like everything was like, oh, here I am and everything's wonderful. No, it was still a journey of faith, trusting God. Because I was there for about a year, and I was still what they call provisional. And then after, it was getting close to, they would have to recruit for this position. And once that recruitment goes out, then I would, be cut. I wouldn't have that position anymore. So people were saying, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you looking for another job? And I said, no, I'm not looking for another job. So I'm like, well, what are you going to do? What happens if you don't get it? I'm like, I think I'm going to be okay. And why was I so confident? Because I knew God had orchestrated this whole thing. I just knew it. And I had that confidence because God had led me over this time on this journey, just showing me how he was, taking care of me. And plus this isn't the first time he's done this. I mean, there's been other instances where he has done things to allow me to trust him, to show me that he's trustworthy. And so that's the thing about each time you go through something and you trust God and you say, okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to let you handle this. He, and you see him deliver, it's that much easier the next time a trial comes to then remember, okay, last time I trusted him and he got me through this and more. I'm going to trust him this time. And then the same thing. But again, it's not always like, okay, you want a new job? Boom, there you go. And it's all perfect. No, I'm going to make you wait till the very last minute.
It's not the three wishes.
No, I'm going to make you wait to the very last minute. I'm going to make you do what the opposite of what everybody else is telling you to do. I'm going to come in at the last minute with a job, and it's not going to be what you think you're looking for. It's not even going to sound like what you're looking for, and it's going to be temporary. Are you still going to trust me? So, that's what I've had to learn. It's like just like when I was praying about a church to go to, I had in my mind what kind of church I thought I needed to go to. And it didn't look like that. The one I ended up going to was very different. Very different. But
Indeed.
But it was what I needed at the time. Right? That's what God. So that's what I've learned about God. It doesn't always, your prayers aren't always answered in the way you think they should be answered. So, but that whole journey of me, being laid off and all of that, I was then able to, it strengthened my faith a lot. And I was able to share. I was so excited that I was able to share with people. People say, oh, what happened? Oh, let me tell you what happened. Because I just was so amazed that I really got this sense that God had been wanting me to put my faith in him completely like that for years. And that when I finally said, I'm done, take it, he was like, I've been waiting for you to do that. And all right, let's get things going. We're going to kick things in gear and you're going to see what's going to happen. I just had that feeling that he was just waiting, and was so excited when I trusted him. Because it's hard. It's hard to put your trust, especially something like your livelihood, It's like it's hard.
It wouldn't be faith unless the stakes are high. I think each of us have to be brought to, oh, one of my lights just went out. Each of us have to be brought to a place of discomfort, and there's always something unexpected.
Yeah.
Things don't always go as planned. But all the more difficult when, let's say, using yourself as an example, you are someone who likes to plan. You're like someone who knows what's going to happen, and yet being brought into situations where there is no plan and you don't know what's going to happen. So, would you say maybe one of the miracles that lets you know that it's God is that ability to have certainty come over you and that feeling of, okay, this is going to work out and what God is telling me is going to happen. But even that ability to reach a certainty and to decide, what you're going to do. Because for a lot of individuals, that's very difficult. I mean, it becomes so difficult. Some people turn to, you know, alternative methods of certainty that aren't always the best for us. And
Right.
no judgment, of course, but sometimes going down the wrong path, trying to feel certain, trying to feel comfort, can take us increasingly away from where we want to go or where we need to be. And so here you are, just in a spiritual manner, attaining that and allowing it to lead you to the place that you need to go.
Yes.
So beautiful thing. So you said something very interesting of learning how to speak to God in your own way. And I'm sure that developed over time. What were and without having to get into specifics, but some of your experiences of learning that path and that process of kind of getting advice of how to speak to God, maybe some methods not working for you. What was your experience?
Well, um, when I was going to church, hearing other people talk about how they heard from God, or, I started comparing myself, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not getting that. And you know, how come, I'm, and I just, I started to doubt, well, maybe he's not speaking to me. And,
Mm,
you know, and, and I just remember, um, and then just sometimes I'm like, well, I talk to him differently. I'm not as, some people are very, there's a time and a place for everything, right?
mm,
There's, being very serious, having a serious prayer, you know, there's, being very reverent. There's just talking casually,
mm,
because it's not always, he wants us to pray, without ceasing. And that doesn't mean like being in prayer, all day long, serious prayer. That means just talking to him, you know. And I think sometimes we get hung up on, oh, well, I need to, get on my knees and make some time and quiet and, have a full prayer, start from, like our Lord's Prayer, gonna worship and then ask for forgiveness and then thank him, and all the steps like he showed us. And and then I think, well, I don't have time for that today, maybe tomorrow, and then you just don't end up doing it. What I think he just, yes, he wants that, but I think he just wants to hear from us.
mm,
So if I don't have time to do that, I'm at least trying to talk to him throughout the day and have engage and have that relationship. And it's weird sometimes. I know I sound crazy, but I'm on my way to work. That seems to be the time for me. On my way to work, I just kind of, I'll be like, oh, thank you for that. Oh, I love that sunrise today. It's just beautiful. I love how you made the light just hit the
mm.
mountains. It looks so nice. And and then it's so funny because sometimes I know this sounds weird, but sometimes I'll hear him say something back to me, like, "Well, I did this because," I'm like, or or like when I'm talking about myself to him, he'll say something back, and I'll be like, "Well, I know," but just I'm having a conversation, because he'll kind of put something on me, like he'll put an impression on me,
Mm.
and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's true," or I'll be like, "Well, I know," but I know it sounds weird, but um, so it's not like audible, um, but it's he will impress on me. And then sometimes when he wants me to do something, I feel like this urgency, like an urgency to do something. And then I just do it. And it's like, I'm like, did I just do that? It's something I normally wouldn't do, right? Because I'm
Mm.
not, um, yes, I can seem bold. I can be bold at times, but he's had me do stuff that I probably never would normally just do on my own.
Outside of the familiar.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. But he gives me that boldness to do it. Like
Mm,
to go speak to somebody or go pray with somebody, go pray with somebody in front of other people. I'm like, oh, I'm believe it or not, I'm kind of shy and
mm,
and um kind of private with that kind of stuff. But there have been instances where I felt a pressing on my heart to go, he wanted me to do something, and so I did it, regardless of whether it felt awkward or weird. But I just knew he wanted me to do it. Um, so, and then again, like I said, with me, he's shown me things in dreams, and they're different than your normal kind of dream because they're usually like there's a lot of symbolism in it, And I'll usually hear myself like saying something, like quoting a scripture or saying something, or he's showing me, he like shows me pictures. It's like I'm looking at pictures of things
Mm.
happening. It's different. And so then I'm like, oh, that sometimes I understand what it means, but then other times I don't. And I'm like, well, that was weird.
Mm.
And then that's where I'll go to, talk to a few people and say, hey, this is what I dreamt. What do you think? And,
Mm.
you know, they, because we can, some people are given the gift of interpreting.
Mm.
Um, and so that's when I'm able to kind of, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm.
Or sometimes God will just impress on me what it meant.
So, and it's a special thing because obviously Christianity, faith is very broad, and not everyone is taught or believes or has experience where God is speaking to them directly. Sometimes there's an intermediary, or perhaps for some, it's, oh, God speaks to me through the written word. It's already been
Mm-hmm,
established.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
here you experience, God speaking to you directly. So for people who maybe question, who want to be able to hear from God and for Him to meet them on their level, what if from your experiences, what advice would you give, or what could you share to them?
So first of all, I'll just say that it's it's not always that I hear from him, and I'm not always 100% sure it's him. So it's not like, I don't want to give the impression that I'm just, I'm hearing from him every day, every minute, and
Direct
we're just
line.
having conversations. And no, sometimes when I'm talking to him, I think he's you know talking back to me sometimes, but there are specific instances in my life where I know without a doubt that it was him guiding me. Um, the other ones, I'm kind of like, I think it was him, or I think it's him talking to me. Um, it's just trying to understand, look at the different instances in your life, and where you think he's guiding you, and kind of understand how that how that happens. For me, it's like I said, I usually feel like this impression. And then you also see the results. What were the results after that, right?
Mm.
Did you get an impression and you did something and it messed everything up and nothing worked out and it made things
Yeah.
worse? It wasn't
Mm.
him.
Mm.
Okay. Were you getting this impression to do something that goes completely against his word? It's not him. So whatever if you're hearing something, it has to align with his word
Mm.
for you to know
That's a
that
big
it's
one.
him, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And was it something that you saw he asked you to do, and you did it,
Mm.
and then there was fruit from that? Was it fruitful? That's that's when you can know, okay, that was God. So then
Mm.
the next time God is speaking to you, you'll be able to recognize it, hopefully. But I'm still, I still pray all the time, and I'm like asking for direction for things, and I don't always know that I'm getting it. Sometimes I have to just step out in faith as well and say,
Mhm.
God, I'm going to do this. I
Mhm.
think this is what you're wanting, and he'll let you know that whether it's not, or it'll either not be fruitful, or it will, So, but yeah.
Yeah, not
um
unlike the disciples caught in the storm, and they see Christ walking on the water, and yet they had, presumably no preparation. They weren't told, hey, guess what, a storm is coming and you're going to have some faith, but I'll be there, don't worry. No, they just wake up and there's a storm, they don't know where Jesus is, and they look out and he's walking on the water, and they're afraid that they're going to sink and die, and he asks them to have faith. So definitely something that occurs, even in scripture, where sometimes you just have to believe.
Mm, yeah.
Mhm.
And, I used to be afraid, like, when, and it hasn't always been like a perfect relationship either.
Mhm.
I, I'll just say that because I think sometimes people think, oh,
Yeah.
well, Christians, oh, you're a Christian. Oh, so everything's perfect. And
Mhm.
you just have blind faith. You just believe everything, you don't question anything. Um, and that's not true. I mean, there have been times as a Christian, you know, um, where I thought I was walking a certain way. I thought I was walking in the direction God wanted me to. And then, um, some things, some things don't work out, the way, like, for instance, I had plans for my life, so did God, but we didn't talk. We didn't work the same. And, and so when you run into disappointments and you think, well, what did I do wrong? Or why did you let me down, God? You know, God's not letting me down. It's just, there's just was, I don't know exactly, but I know there was a period in my life where I was really upset with God. And I felt bad for being upset because I'm a Christian. I'm supposed to,
Mhm.
but I was very disappointed, very discouraged. I never turned away from him. I never stopped going to church, but I was just going through the motions. And I was just kind of being like, yeah, whatever. I'd listen to the sermon and, I'd just be like, whatever, that kind of attitude. And it
Fair.
kind of, it was kind of worrying me the way I was becoming because
Mhm.
um, I didn't like how I was becoming. Um, and um, I found it was very difficult to pray. I didn't really want to talk to God anymore, but I wasn't ready to just turn my back on him. Um, but I had to get help. I had to talk to people that I, trusted. Um, and, your mom being one. And, I remember her saying, it's okay to be upset at God. It's okay. He's big like that. He can take it. Because I told her, I said,
Yeah.
I get upset and I yell at him.
Mhm.
I get upset. I said, you should hear the way I'm talking to him. I'm surprised he doesn't just strike me down. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I was not, it was not pretty. And she said, Lori, he's bigger than that. He loves you so much. He can take it. And she said, I'm pretty sure he's just glad you're talking to him at all. So, I mean, that's the kind of relationship. It's a personal relationship.
Mhm.
It's like, just like, with your spouse or your friend or whoever, you go through ups and downs. And I don't think God wants us to just be like, oh, we have to be, oh, we can't question anything. Don't question anything. Don't get upset. How dare you get upset because this is God's will, whatever. No,
Mhm.
it's a relationship. It's like, God, why is this happening? I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy. And I say that a lot, like, I'm not happy with this, but I understand you're in control and this is, how it's going. And you've got your plans, and I'm trusting you, but I'm still not happy about this. So not happy. But I am happy with these other things because I see the way you bless me. And, every time, I start to pray, I'm like, okay, God, not that I'm not grateful because I am. I'm very grateful. because you have blessed me tremendously. But I'm not happy about this one thing.
It's
So,
very interesting to me that you follow that process because in Old Testament examples, and of course New as well, when anyone came before God, they were supposed to bring an offering, and especially being people who believe in the New Testament, our offering is supposed to be one of worship. I think worship can come in many forms. Without getting into discussing all those forms, I
mm,
think we could agree that one of them is thankfulness.
mm,
And sometimes to open up conversation with God, and I think you've said this by your example, you find the things that you do see that you can be grateful for, that you can be, whether they be big or small, but you start with that. And
mm-hmm.
perhaps that sets the table to have those bigger conversations with God. Would you say that's been part of your experience?
Very much so, because I could, you know, work myself into a deep hole, dark
Mm-hmm.
hole, just thinking of the things that I'm disappointed in, and um, but to pull myself out of that and not get there is to thank him, and to think of, well, okay, but look at all the other stuff that he's done for me, and he's protected me, he's healed me, he's provided for me. He's shown me favor in certain situations. He's gotten me out of certain situations. And I see his blessings constantly. So, um, yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
not
a
to say I
profound
don't,
thing.
but there are times, like, I mean, yeah, there's times where I do think of those other things, but I have to make a conscious effort. Otherwise, I just let myself go off and be depressed, and, well, who wants to be? It's not pretty.
That's the fight.
It's a fight. It is a constant, and that's another thing, as a Christian, it's a fight. It's a fight because you always have these other things coming at you, thoughts, either from yourself, from the enemy, from people around you, you know, um, who may not understand where you're coming from and the choices you make, um, and why. But it is a constant struggle. But again, God, I just owe everything to God.
So bringing everything full circle, I think someone may be watching this that might be on the fence. Certain polls say right now it's 2025, and let's just say it's a time of uncertainty for basically everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And during times of uncertainty, sometimes when we can't figure out things that are around us, it's time to move inward and to perhaps turn to God. So for people who may not know if their career is going to exist in a few months or years, or what their place in society is, or the myriad of things that can cause concern that are present all around us, by what you've experienced and how God has worked in your life, what advice can you give, or what would you say to someone who may be experiencing any of these things?
Um, yeah, it is scary. A lot of things going on. There is a lot of uncertainty. And when I talk to my friends about things that are going on, and, we're all concerned. I hear them express their concerns, um, not knowing. But the one thing that I do know is that God is still in control, and that we may not know what's going to happen, but He does. And He does have a plan. He shared some of that plan for us, in the Bible. Um, and just knowing that He's in control, and He's there, He's here, I can go to Him at any time, gives me a lot of comfort. Because there's a lot of crazy things happening in the world. And just knowing that God is God and He never changes, He remains the same. When so many things are changing in the world, but God is the one constant. That gives me comfort.
Man, couldn't have said it
And
better
you sent
myself.
the prayer away.
That's right.